Hello and welcome to our program today, International Technology Forum Taiwan. I'm Julie Cranston, Director of the SBDC at UCI Applied Innovation. I'd like to thank you so much for joining us. The SBDC is funded in part by the U.S. Small Business Administration in the state of California. We're here to help you start, grow, and succeed in your business by providing no-cost consulting and training such as this webinar. A little housekeeping before we begin. Everyone is muted during the webinar. Tomorrow, the recorded webinar and a PDF copy of the slides will be sent to all participants. We'll have time for Q&A with our panel at the end of the presentation, but please feel free to ask questions during the webinar by clicking on the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Before we get started with our panel discussion, I'd like to welcome our good partner and main funder, Paul Smith from the SBA District Office. Paul is District Office Economic Development Specialist and District International Trade Officer. Paul will say a few words. Thanks so much for being here, Paul, and for all your support.
Oh, thank you very much, Julie. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being on this call today. It's great to be of service to you all. This program is a direct result of the collaboration from the people that you're seeing today and some that can't be here today. And it's a pleasure to bring these types of resources to you. We're all about business development for American industries on a global basis. And I believe that this model is working extremely well, the International Technology Forum. I'd like just to take a few minutes and go through a few slides so you know exactly who we are. The SBA was created in 1953 to help people start and grow their business in the United States. Now, Hannah, are you going to move the slides for me? Okay, very good. Today, we're also, hopefully, we're going to have Pelson Lau on with us. And Pelson represents our Office of International Trade. And he's a great resource. He's been in the banking industry for over 20 years. And he's here to be of service. And we also have 4 very significant international trade loans. Next slide, please. Okay, now we're moving into the international trade slides. So let me just, what I'd like to tell you is that we provide management and technical assistance and certifications for American businesses, both for domestic and international trade development. We fund the small business development centers, like Julie was alluding to, the SCORE chapters and women business centers. In addition to that, we're constantly involved in economic development work throughout our counties of Orange County, Riverside, and San Bernardino. And the medical device industry is one of the fastest growing sectors in our space. We have a number of programs. At this time, I would like to know if Pelson Lau has joined us on the call.
No.
He has not. Okay, so then I'm going to go ahead and proceed with his presentation. And as you can see, we're directly involved in a number of areas, as you can see on this slide, to assist you. Next slide, please. Okay, in the area of export financing, we have 3 significant programs: the Export Working Capital Program to $5 million, the International Trade Loan to $5 million, and the Export Express to $500,000. Next slide, please. Typical loan guarantees from SBA, which are really terrific, particularly at this time, are 50 to 75%. The SBA export loans receive 90% guarantee to the lenders. And the lenders really like this because they're protected in case of loss. Next slide, please. It's very interesting in today's world that today 70% of the exports are actually services rather than products. So you can consider products as well as services. Next slide, please. Okay, see, I'm actually reading Pelson's presentation to you, so I'm going to have to expand on it. The applicants must produce a product or a service and be going into an international market. Manufacturers and suppliers can qualify, and they have to be certified as an American company in good standing. Next one, please. The Export Working Capital Program of $5 million is working capital only, a revolving line of credit only, mostly up to 12 months. What I really like about it, the greatest example is you get an order and you don't have the capacity to build the product or hire the people. We have export loan guarantees available to help you. And in addition to that, which is very nice, is the International Trade Loan Program to $5 million for any assets that you need or anything like that to assist you in fulfilling your product and growing your international business. The Export Express is particularly good because it's can be a revolving line of credit up to $500,000, and you can use it for numerous things, including developing multilingual websites, participating in international trade shows, or anything of that sort. Next slide, please. Okay, it's either transaction-based or asset-based lines of credit. Next slide, please. As you can see from this slide here, it talks about inventory, foreign accounts receivables, insurance, and bank fees, and it's covered. Okay, next slide. Okay, purchase fixed assets, retooling, permanent working capital, and acquire a larger facility. One more slide. Okay, as you can see from the Export Express, it's 500,000, and beyond 500,000, it's 75% loan guarantee. I think at this point, I'll suffice it to say that we're primarily involved in export development. We provide management and technical assistance if you're new to export. Even if you're a multi-million-dollar company and you haven't exported before, we can help you through our resources, and then we can assist you in having the necessary finance to be successful. And at this point, Hannah, I think I'll turn the program back over to Julie.
Thanks so much, Paul. We'd like to introduce Linda DeMario, Executive Vice President of the Greater Irvine Chamber of Commerce. Linda is such a fantastic partner of ours in the SBA. We really appreciate your partnership, Linda. The Greater Irvine Chamber of Commerce has been a partner of ours since our inception 3 years ago. Can't believe we're ready to enter our 4th year, and we really couldn't have done it without the support of the Greater Irvine Chamber of Commerce and your partnership. So if you'd like to say a few words about what your office does.
I would, Julian, thank you. And I have to do shout outs right back. The SBA and the Small Business Development Center are the reason why the Greater Irvine Chamber is able to deliver the scope of services that we do to our businesses in Irvine and Orange County. I mean, quite literally, we won the Presidential E Award in 2018 for offering a full scope of export assistance. And we won that award because we have such excellent partnerships with the organizations that make it possible. And you've just seen a little recitation of some of the resources. I encourage everyone who's watching to recognize that, particularly in these very, very tough times, your Greater Irvine Chamber, but also your SBA and your SBDCs are there to help you. If we agree that only 5% of the world's market is in the United States, then there are huge opportunities for you to use exporting as a growth strategy, and never a better time than now. So please explore those opportunities with your trusted SBA colleagues and with our SBDCs, and let's go ahead and export. Thanks, Julie.
Thanks so much, Linda. Thanks for being here today. Thanks for your partnership always. I'd like to talk a little bit about the SBDC. If you're not familiar with us, it stands for Small Business Development Center. We are hosted by the UCI Beal Applied Innovation Group, and we offer no cost, no catch one-on-one business consulting to high-tech and life science companies, which are high growth and scalable. We help with business start, development, and growth. We can help you at any stage in your journey. So please feel free to follow us on social media and contact us at sbdctech.com/contact if you're interested in one-on-one consulting. We help with everything from SBA loans, so debt, to equity funding, to non-dilutive grant funding, including SBIR, STTR applications. So please reach out if you need any assistance. Thank you, Hannah. And now I would like to turn it over to ULP. University Lab Partners is a wonderful partner of ours, and Sam Cho will be presenting their resource capabilities.
Awesome. Hopefully you enjoyed that short video, even though the music wasn't playing. But thank you, Julie and the SPDC, for just inviting ULP to this forum and just for being such an incredible partner for us. My name is Samuel, and I'm the marketing manager at University Lab Partners. Next slide, please. So just to introduce University Lab Partners, we are OC's. We are a nonprofit wet lab medtech incubator located at UCI Research Park, and we are a project of the Beal Family Foundation. We offer researchers over 17,000 square feet of scientific resources and over $1.5 million of scientific equipment. We currently have 22 resident companies within our space, ranging from SBIR, STTR recipients to publicly traded entities. Next slide, please. So ULP, our focus comes in 3 arms. We assist with the commercialization efforts by offering facility and infrastructure at an exceptional value for biotech and medtech entrepreneurs looking to launch and scale. We are an innovation hub for life science resources and activities through thought leadership events, resources for startups, experts in residence, connections, recruiting, and much more. Next slide, please. And our third arm we focus on is our workforce development activities. We range from starting early at the K-12 outreach to develop that talent pipeline and bring more students into life science and the MedTech Center. We offer hands-on training to bridge that skill gap and allow students to explore science through hands-on experience, and through professional development to continue to grow with lifelong learning and development. Next slide, please. So if you want to learn more about University Lab Partners or just to connect with us, feel free to email us at info@universitylabpartners.org and to follow us on our several social media platforms. And with that, I'll turn it back to Julie.
Thanks so much, Sam. And both Sam and Karen Koch, the ecosystem director at ULP, have been fabulous partners. And either of them are ready and willing to help you with any of your wet lab needs and all of their attendance services. They have quite an offering. It's really beneficial to startups. So please take a look if you're at that stage of your company development. So now we would like to introduce Luis Jimenez. Our program today will be moderated by Luis, who serves as the Vice President of Business Development for Brandwood CKC. He's the current president of the Orange County Regulatory Affairs Discussion Group, or OPRA. His experience includes operations, quality control, and CGMP manufacturing, regulatory affairs for manufacturing, design engineering, technology transfer, and project management within a startup and large corporations such as Johnson & Johnson and Express Scripts. Luis is passionate about the juncture between life sciences innovation, entrepreneurship, and regulatory frameworks. I'd like to introduce Luis Jimenez of Brandwood CKC, also a fabulous partner of ours.
Thank you very much, Julie. I guess for my slides, we could just use Jenny's. If you could share your screen, we'll just go by to introduce Brandwood CKC. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for joining us. And yes, we have a packed agenda. I'm very excited to share about what opportunities might arise for Taiwan. And just to introduce, Brandwood CKC is a global regulatory and quality consulting firm. Our headquarters are in Australia. I'm based in a Los Angeles office, and we do global registrations for medical devices, diagnostics, and pharmaceutical products. We have the capability of doing combination products and products from just inception to all the way down to post-market and registrations. It's interesting also to note that we've been doing this partnership with SBA and with the SBDC at UCI the Co for some months now, maybe a year. We've done Australia, we've done Canada, we've done UK, and then now we're doing Taiwan. And that represents a little bit of the global perspective that our firm can bring. If we go to the next slide. Jenny is a colleague of mine. I'm very, it's really great to have her present on Taiwan. When she starts, she'll say something in Mandarin, as she's actually from Taiwan, but located in Australia. She has extensive experience. She's one of the consultants for Brandwood CKC and has done a number of registrations in Taiwan and China. And she brings many years of experience in global regulatory affairs. She also has experience in research. And it's a pleasure for me to introduce Jenny, who will talk to you about the registration process for medical devices in Taiwan.
Thank you, Luis, for the introduction, and good afternoon, everyone. Our agenda for this session, first, I'll introduce some background information of the Taiwan market. This will be followed by a brief look at the local regulatory agency, and legislation framework, and of course, the detailed registration process in Taiwan, including the quality system compliance for manufacturers and product registration requirements. And finally, I'll walk you through some upcoming changes in the TFDA regulations. First, market overview. Taiwan has a population of about 24 million now, which is almost the size of the Australian population, which is 25 million. The market size for medical devices alone is about 4.2 million in 2019, and this does not include medicines and other therapeutic goods. The entire sector combined would be around 15 billion. It is also growing quite strongly. The estimated annual growth is 7% over the next 5 years. It has one of the most advanced healthcare systems in the world, ranking #1 among 93 countries for 2 consecutive years from mid-2018 to mid-2020. Most of the high-end devices are imported from overseas, and US alone contributes over 30%. So the healthcare sector, it has a sophisticated market that drives the demand for the health technology in Taiwan. Taiwan has officially become an aged society when the aging rate surpassed the 14% mark in 2018, and the rate continues to rise. It is projected to grow to 16 this year. The life expectancy is over 80 years old, and this is above the global average. Most cares are delivered to public patients in Taiwan. Over 99% of the population is covered by the national health insurance. That translates into opportunities for people who want to import medical devices to Taiwan. Let's begin with local regulatory body and the legislation. So Taiwan TFDA regulates food, drugs, medical devices, and cosmetics, very similar to the US FDA. The regulation dates back to 1993 when Pharmaceutical Affairs Act was enacted. But medical devices were only seriously regulated since 2005. And in 2010, TFDA was established under the Department of Health. And in 2013, DOH was elevated to the Ministry of Health and Welfare. We've seen this promotion across many agent jurisdictions in the last 10 years, where regulatory agencies have been effectively promoted to a higher status to reflect their important roles in the health tech industry. And that's what happened in Taiwan. Now, earlier this year, the ministry announced a new Medical Device Act, which will separate the regulations for medical devices from those for drugs in the current overarching act, which covers both medicines and devices. We'll touch on this topic again later. There's a typical legislation framework. The act is currently the Pharmaceutical Affairs Act. The latest version is amended in 2018. Underneath, there are regulations and rules for the registration and management of therapeutic goods, including post-market reporting activities. One tier down, TFDA published a range of guidance for labeling, good manufacturing process, GCP, and a few product-specific technical standards. Providing the clinical testing requirements and clinical evaluation key points. For example, technical standards for home use, blood glucose monitor, artificial intelligence, machine learning-based software, dental bone grafts, etc. Let's look at the key points on how regulation works in Taiwan. Firstly, there are a number of things that you need to have to gain a Taiwan regulatory approval. And of course, the focus is on the safety and efficacy of the device, but you must have firstly country of origin approval. If the device is not approved in the country where it is manufactured, it will not be approved by the agency. This is similar to other parts of Asia, including mainland China. Predicate is strongly preferred. You can still go forward without predicates, but the product will be considered as a novel device, which will require a longer review timeline. You also need to have a valid manufacturing quality system certificate that is called QSD certificate issued by TFDA. You will come to the so the details will be provided later, but you will need an ISO 13485 certificate as a minimum to start with for a QSD application. Finally, you need a local entity to submit and hold the registration license for you. You can use either a local distributor or an independent regulatory agency like Brandwood CKC Taiwan branch as your local sponsor. And obviously, if you you will be able to supply your product through multiple channels if you are using an independent agency, because a distributor does not normally share a license with their competitors. Now, common documents. There are common technical documents for all regulatory submissions. Firstly, technical files. These include all preclinical testing results, including biocompatibility tests, electrical safety, EMC tests, product-specific performance testing, animal studies, etc. TFDA requires the actual testing protocols and reports, as well as quality control check for the final release of a representative batch. Clinical evaluation report is not mandatory for devices with a predicate in Taiwan. However, in practice, most people will still supply CER anyway. This is because the technical differences as compared to a predicate may still need additional clinical data. And the agency generally requests for the CER if it is a high-risk device. Drug dossier if you have a medicinal component with it. Finally, TFDA accepts most documents in English, except for the labeling materials. They must be in traditional Mandarin script that differs from China, which they use simplified Chinese characters. In Taiwan, you must have traditional Mandarin script as well as English labeling. Now, for administrative documents, you need a QSD certificate, a signed letter of authorization from the legal manufacturer appointing the local sponsor to act on your behalf, country of origin approval, and the sponsor must have an appropriate business license which covers dealing of therapeutic goods as part of the business license. Let's begin with quality system documentation. QSD certificate is issued by the Taiwan FDA. You must obtain this certificate before you proceed with product registration. Your product registration license will be linked to a QSD because this certificate is issued per manufacturing sites. It is possible that you have multiple product registration license linked to the same QSD. If you have an ISO 13485 certificate, you generally are in line with Taiwan requirements for quality system. However, there are some specific post-market requirements that you must incorporate into your post-market SOPs. For example, you must specify the TFDA reporting timelines for adverse events and recalls, and you must assign the role for managing those activities in your procedure documents. The QSD certificate has a valid period of 3 years, and the renewal must be submitted 6 months prior to the expiry dates. One nuance of the system is that QSD validity cycle has a different length to the device validity cycle, which is 5 years. So the two can get out of step. The product registration license is not valid if it is linked to an expired QSD. Finally, it takes 120 calendar days for the Taiwan FDA to review a QSD application. And most class 1 non-sterile do not require QSD certificates. Now, there are 3 pathways to get a QSD. 2 of them are bridge pathways. The third is the standard pathway. So the first is in the bridge pathway for the US manufacturers. The way that works is you submit US most recent establishment inspection report, a certificate to foreign governments issued by the FDA verifying the device is legally to be supplied in the US, and an ISO 13485 certificate. The second bridge pathway is for the EU manufacturers. In those cases, the requirements are similar. You submit the most recent inspection reports issued by the notified body, the free cell certificate, and an ISO certificate. If you do not have a European or US quality system approval, you will need to go through the standard pathway where you submit an ISO 13485 certificate plus the full quality manual, all quality procedures, manufacturing flow charts, layout of facilities, equipment used in the production. So for overseas manufacturers, the QSD review is typically carried out in a desktop format. However, if the device falls into the announced categories, now being the heart valve replacement, artificial cornea, vascular grafts, passive tendon prosthesis, you will need to apply for an on-site inspection at the same time. So Taiwan FDA will continue to update the list of the devices that require an on-site inspection, but for the time being, there are only these 4 items on the list. The reviewing process works like this. First, you file the submission to Taiwan FDA. Once received, they will pass it to the third-party reviewer for technical review. This takes about 90 days. If the external review has a question, usually they do, they will issue a notice to the applicant to request for more information. The applicant is allowed 60 days to respond to the review questions. The reviewer will then have 30 days to review the response dossier and finalize their comments. And the comments are sent back to the TFDA. TFDA will then decide whether to raise further questions based on the comments received or issue their final decision to the applicant. The total cycle takes about 6 months, but this may be reduced or elongated depending on the completeness of the submission files. So the most frequent question for QSD is about the manufacturing site. As we mentioned, your QSD can be linked to one address only. If your product is manufactured at one site from start to final release, such as the case for product A here, then this is simple QSD site would be point number 1. If your products require multiple sites for different manufacturing process, for example, in this case, your product B conducts packaging at 2 sites, perhaps for 2 components respectively, then being boxed together at plant 3, followed by a sterilization process that happens at a vendor site. It then be shipped back to plant 3 for final check and release. So the question is, which plant is the manufacturing address that goes on the QSD? The answer is plant 3. So whichever conducts the final quality control for the final release, all of the other facilities are considered your subcontractors on the application. Now let's look at the product registration process. So Taiwan operates a risk-based application and has its own classification catalog. The classification system, however, is very similar to the USA classification. There are 3 classes from low to high risk. For class 1, you still need to apply for a registration and license, but it is a declaration mainly. You can usually get a license on the same day when submitted over the counter. For class 2, with moderate risks, you need to submit technical files. And for class 3, the technical files needs to be in a stat format, which is formulated by the Global Harmonization Task Force. It's the predecessor of the IMDRF. The reviewing timeline for class 2 devices application are submitted to TFDA. The agency takes about 2 weeks to administer the acceptance and allocate the submission to a reviewer. At that point, the clock starts. The TFDA has 75 calendar days to conduct its first round of review. TFDA will then issue formal review questions to the applicants. The applicant will have about 60 days to respond. This is quite a tight timeline, just 60 days to prepare the response. You submit the response, TFDA has around 65 days to finalize the application and come to the decision. So there's only a single round of review questions with a relatively short time to provide your responses. The overall timeline is about 7 months. For novel devices which do not have an appropriate predicate or devices with a drug component, the review can take longer. And because the time for external review does not count over this indicative timeline, the entire review cycle can be longer than 17 months. For class 3, same process, but with slightly different timeline. The first round review is 105 days. The second round is 95 days, but the response period is the same, 60 days. The overall length is about 9 months, but in general, class 3 takes about 12 months based on experience. The required documents are mainly based on the classification of device. For class 1, documents are mainly administrative. However, you will still need to comply with the labeling requirements. If you subcontract the manufacturer to a third party, you will need to supply a copy of the original contract with your subcontractor. For class 2 and 3, technical files will be required. These include your preclinical testing protocols and reports and quality control testing certificates. If you have a perfect predicate, CER may be exempted, but in most cases, most people will still supply anyway. For class 3, the technical files must be submitted in stat formats, although the regulation says that if you have a predicate, CER can be exempted. In practice, the FDA will request a CER for high-risk devices, such as implantables. And finally, the essential principles checklist for safety and efficacy that follows GHTF model or EU model must be supplied for class 3. For novel devices, you must supply the full technical dossier along with the CER. The agency will take a deeper look at those files and take them to the external expert assessment as well. Now, for class 2 product, if you already have both the US and EU approvals that cover the models to be registered in Taiwan, you don't need to supply preclinical data, quality control testing certificate, or even CER if you have a suitable predicate. This basically means that the review will mainly be administrative, as the bulk of the technical files is exempted. So let's look at the international data for clinical trials. So in general, Taiwan FDA accepts international data for clinical trials. And same as most of other jurisdictions, this is subject to compliance with Taiwan GCP, which is effectively based on around ISO 14155. And secondly, the applicability of data to Taiwan usage intensive population must be considered, for example, ethnicity and genetics. The authority has the power to announce product categories that require local clinical trials, but so far only contact lenses are mandatory for local studies. Even for this type of products, there are still exceptions if you have, similar materials of construct and structure. In practice, it is very rare for Taiwan to request for local clinical data. So if there is international data, they will accept it. TFDA also has a channel in place where you can consult with them prior to the registration submission. If ethnicity or genetics do have an impact on your product applicability to the Asian population. Now moving on to labeling. Different from China, where all submission documents must be supplied in both English and Chinese. In Taiwan, you can supply all technical files in English, except for labeling. You must provide a translated IFU in traditional Mandarin, as opposed to China, where they use simplified script. English IFU is also required for submission, but TFDA only uses it as a reference and will not request you to make amendments on your English version. There are very specific requirements for the formats, things such as warning statements, country indictions, precautions, side effects must be in bold black, otherwise in red with a box surrounding texts. You must also include manufacturer and sponsor name, address. Chinese product name must not include any foreign letter, number, or symbol. This means that you will need to translate your brand name, if any, into Chinese. Finally, you must include model numbers and their specifications in the translated IFU. Just a quick summary of device registration in Taiwan. For most non-sterile class 1, you do not need a QSD certificate. This is, there is no requirement to submit country of origin approval, no technical files. You only need to provide some administrative documents, such as application form, an agreement between you and your subcontractor. Generally, class 1 are simply self-declared. The manufacturer must hold the evidence that they comply with the regulations, very similar to Europe and Australia and most part of the jurisdictions. For class 2 devices, you must have a QSD, country of origin approval, non-clinical and clinical data, as well as administrative documents. If you hold both USA and European approvals for class 2, you may be exempted from technical files altogether, both preclinical and clinical data. For class 3, you will require all documents on the list, and the technical files must be supplied in a stat format. Renewal applications. As I said, QSD is on a 3-year renewal cycle. Product registration is on 5-year, so they do get out of step. The renewal of product registration needs to be submitted within 6 months prior to the expiration date. The QSD has 3-year validity, and renewal must submit it 6 months prior to the certificate expiration dates. So you need to manage your calendar and not forget to get back to the agency for the renewal at the right time. Otherwise, you'll find lapses in your registration and you'll have to start it all over again. There are 2 types of change applications, technical and admin change. Technical changes include, for example, changes to manufacturing address, product performance, model numbers. It takes about 90 days to process. Admin change include changes to manufacturer's name, sponsor information, and labeling. For the labeling change though, if the information you intend to update is technical, it will fall into the technical change category. So there are some changes coming along with Taiwan. I'd like to walk you through those briefly. So Taiwan has recently announced a new Medical Device Act in January this year. This is still in draft, but as some relevant guidance has already come out this year, we expect that we are not far away from its effective dates. So what are the changes? Firstly, the definitions of manufacturer. Current act defines a legal manufacturer as an entity who manufactures, conducts packaging, labeling, sterilization, and final release. The new act, once implemented, will extend the definition to an entity who simply design and place their product under their name. This opens doors for entities who have their great ideas for innovative products, but don't have facilities to actually produce the product. This way you can subcontract the manufacturer to a third party while staying as a legal manufacturer on the product label. Secondly, good distribution practice. The current act only requires product traceability system to be established for certain drug categories as announced by the authority. Under the new act, manufacturers as well as local distributors, local hospitals will be required to establish and maintain a traceability system for high-risk devices. And TFDA will announce which product types will require submission of those records. And on this point, they also will introduce separate guidance on the contents, formats, and submission methods of those records. If you currently have Class 3 products supplied to Taiwan, well, you might need to revisit the agreement with your local distributors to ensure that the agreement aligns with the upcoming regulatory requirements. Next key change is post-market surveillance strengthening. So certain device types will be required to submit periodic safety monitoring reports to the FDA. The device types are still yet to be announced, but this is basically an alignment with the European MDR requirements, where the PSR must be submitted to the regulator for high-risk devices. Again, TFDA will provide guidance on the report format, timeline, and submission channel. And finally, the online listing for Class 1. Currently, the law requires you to submit hard copy to TFDA regardless of classification. In the future, certain Class 1 will change from a registration process to an online notification process, which will simplify the application for Class 1. Again, Class 1 products which are eligible for this pathway will be announced by TFDA. Now, the final change, this is not stipulated in the new act, but TFDA has been implementing a pilot program for an electronic submission system for Class 2 and 3 since 2019 with domestic manufacturers. They have also provided workshops to the industry on the operations of the new system. A recent workshop actually took place last month, and which myself had the opportunity to participate. Some improvements on the system are still underway, but TFDA expects that this will be soon finalized and will be mandatory. There will be mandatory online submission for certain types of devices, possibly in September, October next year, the latest. And of course, the eventual goal is to get rid of paper submission for all devices applications from either overseas or domestically. In the workshop, TFDA mentioned that in the future, with the implementation of the electronic submission system, they will possibly adopt the table of contents of regulated product submission created by MDRF. This is also the same folder structure adopted by China since last year for their electronic submission system. If you are not familiar with the structure, you can click on this link for detailed guidance. But for now, none of these are effective yet. So just watch this space and keep an eye out on the updates. Yeah, that's all of my presentation. I hope this provides some useful information for you. And if you have any questions, feel free to email us, or we also have a combined Q&A session at the end of this event. So please feel free to ask your question then. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Jenny, there's a couple of questions you might want to type answers to, and that will show up to attendees as well. Just a couple housekeeping items. The slides and a recording will be provided after the presentation, so people can address that. Because of time, we'll jump onto our next presentation. We'll be covering logistics and supplies, and Morrison Express has volunteered to make that presentation. Eduardo Vargas is a regional director of sales and oversees the logistics and transportation. I've had a chance to browse this presentation. Very much looking forward to learning about the opportunity for Taiwan, and also some of the interesting case studies about how to the transportation can be really involved for medical devices, therapeutics as well. So over to you, Eduardo, and his colleague Kevin as well.
Thank you, Luis. Thank you for introducing us. My name is Eduardo Vargas. I'm Regional Director for the West Coast for Morrison Express. Morrison Express is a freight forwarding company. My colleague, Kevin Cortis, is gonna introduce the presentation and also the company. So Kevin.
Yeah, thank you, Eduardo, and thank you, everybody. I appreciate the invite. My name is Kevin Cortis. I am the Director of Sales for the Americas for Morrison Express USA. And I'm gonna just give you a brief overview of our company, and with some specifics on Taiwan and the exporting out of Taiwan. And then I will turn it back over to Eduardo to finish the show. So we'll get through this with no pain. So not gonna go through all the figures here. You can see them lining up, but what I am happy to announce is that since we put this together, the numbers have grown. So we're moving in a very positive direction. Oh, wow, I'm not sure what just happened there.
Sorry.
Oh,
My bad.
Oh, all right, no problem. Hey, you got to keep me on my toes. That's good. So anyway, like I said, happy to announce that the numbers have grown to near 700 million in revenue at this time. And what I want to point out is that we have 80 of our own Morrison Express Corporation offices worldwide, covering 3 continents. And on Africa, Australia, and South America, we're utilizing strong agent agreements and in places multiple agents in order to ensure we have the proper coverage and capabilities throughout each country and every city. So just wanted to show that, and that number continues to grow as well, along with the others. Looking at about 1,500 plus staff. We're actually on the hunt right now for more staff as we are investing to grow and develop. Morrison Express is a complete logistics company. So if you know anything about forwarding, our core business has been air freight since our start in 1792. And that's been our core business. But obviously we saw a shift a few years back, especially when production started planning a little bit more in advance, a little bit more efficiently, so that they could get freight on the water and pay freight costs about 1/4%, you know. International budgets get cut quickly. So ocean freight became a very strong product for us. So we have ocean directors throughout all of our 3 key regions in Europe, Asia, and the US, or North America, that are really driving the ocean freight product in many different forms. We have complete customs brokerage throughout the world, any port, any airport, any CY, any ramp. Sorry, those are industry terms. But and we have licensed brokers at all of our branches and directors of compliance in each of our regions to ensure that we stay 100% compliant and certified so we can keep our IATA. We offer warehousing services, complete warehouse management systems that can be integrated with your customer, with your 3PL, your 4PL, or any of your suppliers for complete inventory visibility, in and out visibility through the supply chain, and any type of reporting as well. So we can integrate our systems directly with your systems. On the distribution side, contract logistics, we've seen a strong growth in this, not just on the domestic side as things started to ramp back up through the pandemic, but an overflow of cargo once Asia started back on their productions, but we weren't fully operable here at the state level. We've seen that necessity for contract logistics and distribution on behalf, or a cross-dock operation on behalf of our customers, simply because they didn't have the space and capabilities or resources to do so, considering a lot of people were remote. So we've seen a strong growth there, and something that we're selling very highly. Oh, it disappeared again. And in supply chain solutions, this is actually critical right now. We're in a very technological age. We are all working remotely. Heck, we're on a Zoom right now, which normally we'd be doing a lot more face-to-face. So this is purchase order management, vendor management, inventory management as well, with complete integration of systems for order automation, complete supply chain visibility, both at your desk and remote and mobily as well. So this is something that is very strong for us. Plus, it is our own in-house built IT platform that allows great flexibility and the ability to customize for any of our clients' requirements, small or large, and throughout the world. All right. This just shows you our global footprint across the Americas, EMEA, and Asia Pacific. Those are those 80 offices that were mentioned. You can count them up. If you can count real fast, if you can count real fast. Oh man, it stayed on the screen. Or you can go into the next one. Sorry, technical difficulty right there. Not sure what just happened. You can, okay. Apparently my screen share went away. So I apologize.
We're at a global footprint at screen.
Right, but it's supposed to go to the next one. You cannot start screen share while the other participant is. Eduardo.
Okay, there you go.
Eduardo, playing games on me. Unbelievable. Oh, you want me to share it now? Sorry about that. Well, I'll just continue to do it, Eduardo. That's fine.
There you go.
I mean, we're a team. We're a team in this. Through the good, the bad, the ugly, which we've been facing every single day. So this is just an example of a little challenge. But look, we've just overcome it and created solutions. That's what we do. Morrison Express actually was named after Morrison Peak, which is the highest peak in Taiwan of the Jade mountain range. So that's where obviously we excelled to be and where our expectations are. We have 6 offices in Taiwan. You can see listed there, with our headquarters in Taipei, 2 main warehouses, 10,000 square meters each in Taiyang and Taichung. And over 50% of our 1,000 plus customers in Taiwan are actually public companies. And here we list our certifications, ISO 9001 certifications on operations. We're in the process of completing or getting through our ISO 14001 environmental sustainability certification. And this lists off a few of our core carriers there, which I'll just touch on very briefly, as far as China Airlines, EVA Airlines, which are Taiwanese based, and that's where our stronghold is as far as core carriers in and out of Taiwan. All right, go ahead, Eduardo. I don't want to mess it up. Okay, so interesting enough, as we've done as a company here, and we've persevered very strong through this pandemic, so has Taiwan. So you can see in these 3 key regions here, and Japan is the only that's showing a decline, but in China, including Hong Kong, the US and Europe, they've actually shown a growth in August year over year of near 20%, or an average of 20%. Those figures there are in billions of US dollars, so you can check that. And for the year to date through August, although obviously the Q1 and Q2, they were heavily impacted out of Taiwan when COVID first hit, but they've still seen a growth of 7 to 9% from China, US, and Europe outbound orders, which is quite amazing. And that number obviously has continued to grow, as you can see the difference between August and then year to date up to that point. And I'll talk about a couple of the commodities here coming up. Please, sir. Thank you. Okay. So what's contributing to a lot of that growth is electronic products, which has always been the case, IT and communication electronic products. You can see the figures there as far as what they've generated in August themselves on the 14.02 billion. And I believe the other side is 13. I have my face blocking it. But what we've also seen is the semicon business has erupted, and Taiwan was very instrumental in the PPE, the personal protective equipment, coming into the US and into Europe. And now the follow-up with the vaccine as well, and some of the pharma and medical companies here in the U.S. supporting those projects and with the start to get them here, hopefully sooner than later. Oh, man, if you want me done, I can be done. I know,
sorry.
I could talk all day, but I'll close off. But the medical and pharma will be here when the roaches are still around. I mean, that is always critical. And this pandemic has shown us just how critical it is within the hospitals and the other healthcare, but also what we're seeing in the companies that are going back to work as far as the additional systems and equipment and steps that they must take in order to come to work every day. And I did a trip last week and I must have had my temperature taken at least 150 times and I would have done it 300, just to see the clients for the first time in about a year. So all these additional steps, and a lot of this coming in from Taiwan and Asia, is really going to continue to grow with the overall pharma industry. As well as like optical cabling has been huge because a lot of us are working from home. This map is from my home right now. And so we need to have our home offices set up. We need to have the optical cabling. We need to have all the equipment and complete connectivity like we're doing right now in order to keep in contact with our clients, our prospects, and our vendors. So that's something that we've seen grow. And then, of course, some of us have maybe already made the purchase of a new mobile phone or maybe a gaming system that has happened recently. So those, along with some stationary bikes, are really creating a lot of capacity and rate spikes. So it shows here, China and EVA, two of our core carriers, expecting 20 to 30% additional increases. We're in the peak of pandemic as well. So you put those two P's together and the rates have doubled up, double digits, come back down. We got excited, then it's back up again. And we expect that to continue potentially through the Chinese New Year this next year in February. But we hope that we'll see some stabilization come mid-December and Q1 as these product bursts reduce and they're just doing fulfillment, and also the holiday season passes. So what we're going to see on the logistics side and what we work with and our challenges we face every day and why we need to be creative with our solutions is the passenger fleets are still down. So we've lost the belly space. They have been able to retrofit some of those to move the cargo via passenger aircraft strapped into seats or retrofit. Freighters have turned to charters to support these PPE, stationary bikes, and product bursts as well. So that has created a big fluctuation in pricing that could be valid for 1 week or just less than 24 hours. So it's our responsibility as your forwarding agent to find the proper solutions to maintain your supply chain movement. And that is our goal. Really, at the end of the day, our customer needs to be happy, because that trickle effect means you're happy and we're happy as well as a partnership. Okay, I think I'm almost finished here. These are just a small batch of the healthcare related customers that we currently work with, along with our pharma vertical that is in pursuit at this time. So this just gives you a small list of who we're working with on the healthcare and pharma side. And I believe you can go to the next one, but I'm going to turn it back over to you because I covered a good bit of this already. So, yep. Well, thank you so much again. Appreciate you inviting me. Now I'll turn it over to my colleague and good man, Eduardo.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you for explaining and for the introduction. Yeah, this slide I'm not going to talk about much because Kevin already covered the situation at the market. We're going to move on to the case studies and what we do on a day-to-day basis. Taipei is one of the lanes we call power lanes because what we do from Taipei, Shanghai, and Hong Kong, and lately mostly from Singapore as well, into the US is imports, but we build our own ULD. That means that, I mean, this is like a air freight term, but what we build is kind of a Tetris, as you see the pictures here, kind of a Tetris buildup of different set of products. Like, for instance, Kevin mentioned the stationary bikes, maybe computers, maybe sensors, and related to the life sciences industry, maybe devices, components, screens, circuit boards, whatever is manufactured either in Taiwan or any of the other power lanes that I mentioned. And finally, we build what we call a ULD, which is a product on top of a piece of equipment similar to a cookie sheet. And that is about maybe 2,000 to 3,000 kilos. So it's 3 tons, maybe a little bit more than 3 tons, 3,500 kilos maximum. And then that gives us the chance to tender this entire piece of freight into the airplane. So we give that to the airline put it inside, and they build their own as well and combine with others. And then a destination in US, let's say LAX or Chicago or JFK, we recover that freight quickly. And the reason why I say quickly is because we build it up. So all inside this cookie sheet and this net on top of this cargo set up by us, it belongs to Morrison Express. So all the packages turned to us back in a matter of maybe an hour or two after the flight lands. And that gives us a differentiation compared to just standard loose pallets or cartons. So that gives us agility and the relationship with the airline as well. This is an example for EVA Air. That's one of the 2 largest airlines in Taiwan. For cold chain cargo, this is related to healthcare, right? And more maybe the COVID vaccine, which is this slide is about. We require similar process, but the difference is that the speed has to be much faster. So we need from day 1 to day 2 to recover the freight from the shipper into a specialized vehicle, right? So this vehicle is gonna look cleaner and more specialized than the ones on the previous slide. And also the facility we tender the terminal is going to be much different as well, because the way the truck anchors into the terminal is in an insulated environment, right? So the cold chain is not going to be broken. The plane is going to be loaded at the terminal, and as you can see, for the coronavirus and COVID-19 vaccine, the temperature range is set up. So we have and we count with all the, let's say, certifications for good distribution practices, and we have the ability to validate good manufacturing practices from our shippers, and also have all the process controlled at the right temperature for them to be loaded at the specific trucks. Even if for the airline, for instance, if it's dry ice, it's going to be 70 to 80 Celsius. And then if it requires lower temperature, 0 to 25 Celsius, then we have an envirotainer. Let's move on, because this is a generic example, but I have a couple of case studies for you. One is for Pfizer. That's one of our clients. For this case, we do dry ice cargo. So it doesn't require the envirotainer, the special container is just the regular boxes, but the boxes and cartons are gonna have dry ice. The challenge with the dry ice is that we need to report and take pictures, also refill when, for instance, as Kevin mentioned, right, anything can happen. Maybe the flight didn't depart on time or didn't arrive on time, or something happens in between, maybe a stop point in between origin and destination, then we need to refill, make sure that the dry ice doesn't go off. And that's usually on a range of maybe 24 to 72 hours. So after that, we need to refill and make sure we provide all the conditions for the cargo to be kept at the right temperature, right? And we have temperature recorders and sensors that provide at all times the right information, not only to us, but to our clients. The second case study I have for you, and this is the last one of our presentation, is for Eli Lilly. You know, Lilly has signed an agreement and also is already producing the COVID vaccines. They're going to manufacture about 3 million units in between now and December this year. And they're planning to manufacture 1 billion doses for next year in 2021. So all that process and contracts are already on our, signed on our side to be ready to transport that product. And what we use in that case is an RKN container, which is called also an envirotainer. It's a container for the airplane. And the container is owned by the airline, but we lease it. So we lease it at origin, and the leasing finishes at destination. We pay whatever cost is, including the return of that container. We negotiate that with the airline, and that cost is transparent for our clients because we just charge them on a per kilo basis. The broker has to also apply for the airline to borrow the container. And this is a depiction of the form in Taiwan that we use. And the next page talks about the final sequence of the container. Once the container is used either for pickup or a destination for delivery, we don't need to plug in that container. So that container is a standalone. It has a battery and it can last for a certain time, and the temperature is controlled inside. And we just have to monitor at the screen here. You have an example, and it has a seal that is recorded at the moment of the loading, and also recorded the breaking of the seal at the moment of the destination when the cargo is unloaded. And finally, the container is returned back to the airline. So this is a summary of part of our experience. And as Kevin said, we're at service of our clients, not only in Taiwan, but as I said, on the power lanes, Hong Kong, Shanghai, and Singapore. And this finishes our presentation. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Eduardo, for that. Maybe you can prepare an answer to how the vaccines that require -80 shipment and distribution are going to be taken to rural areas. So
Yes.
We'll move to that after we talk about M&A. I'm very excited about the next presentation as well. We'll have Serge Jonnaert. He's with the group that focuses, Corum Group, focuses on M&A, and has a wonderful presentation about what the merger and acquisition activity has happened in between Taiwan and the US, and perhaps some opportunities that some in the audience might not have considered. Serge, would you share your screen so people can see it?
Yeah, I think somebody has to relinquish first before I can share.
Okay.
I think Eduardo is still sharing, so.
Can you?
Here we go. All right. Well, thank you, and good evening, everybody. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So my name is Serge Jonnaert. I'm a senior vice president at Corum Group. I want to talk to you a little bit about biotech investment and, of course, M&A in Taiwan. I'm a 30-year tech exec with 2 of my own exits, as well as 9 buy-side transactions prior to joining Corum. I'm still very heavily involved with healthcare, more specifically in clinical diagnostics. I'm the president of the IVD Industry Connectivity Consortium. I'm a member of the SHIELD Clinical Work Group, and now also a member of the Reagan-Udall, which is an FDA-affiliated organization member. Done quite a bit of work in Asia, I'd say both in terms of partnership deals, both in mainland China. My first experience in Taiwan was when there was a massive earthquake in Taichung. So it was probably not the nicest introduction, but from that point on, it went very well. Just one slide about Corum. We do only sell-side representation of technology companies, have over the years done 400 transactions, more than $10 billion. You can see, take a look at our website. It has all the tombstones there. We really set ourselves apart in the sense that we always run a very detailed, professional, global process. About 67% of our activities right now are international. I just sold a company in Ireland a couple of weeks ago, but we also deal with a lot of buyers both in Europe, in Asia, as well as Australia and New Zealand. A little bit about Taiwan investments and M&A. Needless to say, this was already stated early, but just wanted to express that in a little bit of numbers. Taiwan's biomedical industry in 2019 had gone literally over a course of 10 years from maybe a little under $10 billion to, well, now over $16 billion. And I would say with an almost equal spread, biotech, pharma, and medical devices. Actually, medical devices have stayed reasonably flat. But what's important here is, needless to say, if you look at the valuations of some of the biotech companies in Taiwan, it continues to trend up, not only in terms of valuation, but the revenue that this represents to the Taiwanese economy, as well as the number of companies and employees. So the export value, talked a little bit about earlier about import and export, that is also growing significantly, but also the domestic market in Taiwan has almost doubled in 10 years. From an M&A point of view, I was trying to find some specific Taiwan data. Everything that gets reported for all of China, so that includes mainland China, Taiwan, Hong Kong, as well as Macau. But what's important here is biotech is huge, right? In 2019 alone, we saw an increase of 12% year over year for a total of $22 billion. Actually, the biggest transaction of that was Amgen's acquisition for $2.7 billion of BeiGene. But in general, 437 deals in 1 year, just for one industry or one market segment. Of course, that is a huge number of deals. What are some of the focus areas in Taiwan? Jenny mentioned this already a little bit earlier, but here are some of the key areas where I would say both Taiwanese companies as well as Chinese companies that operate in Taiwan are looking for either partnerships, investments, or are looking to make acquisitions. Digital health is huge, right? I mean, this is probably one of the key areas where some of the bigger, well-known and leading Taiwanese tech companies that have basically been at the genesis of the computing industry are now also diversifying into the biomedical industry. The National Health Informatics Project is very interesting because, of course, like every country, Taiwan is making a sizable investment in upgrading infrastructure, communications, and access to data. And an interesting one here is, and there's very few countries in the world that actually do that, but Taiwan actually does provide access to population data, which of course it's $23.6 million for AI biotech companies. And there's very few countries in the world that actually do this. So if you're in an area where you need to have access to large data sets for artificial intelligence, machine learning, this may be something for you to look into. Telemedicine is huge. It is huge all over the world, especially now with COVID-19. It was a nice to have for a lot of practitioners as well as for insurance companies. Now you basically can't talk to a doctor or nurse practitioner anymore without having had a telemedicine session, and it will remain like that for the foreseeable future. Long-term care, Jenny alluded to that, the aging population, it is a given in large parts of the world, and Taiwan, of course, is not immune to that. It's projected that Taiwan will have a 20% of 65 plusers, which makes it a super aged domestic society. And of course, other specific areas of serious interest is anything that relates to precision medicine, gene banks, newborn screening, whole genome, and exome sequencing. And so these are kind of, if you are in one of those areas, there's a good potential for you to either partner or seek investments or get acquired by a Taiwanese company. So what are those opportunities? Well, you can have R&D and manufacturing collaboration sprinkled throughout the previous presentations that this was touched on. You can have licensing agreements, you can have a direct investment, but M&A is also a serious consideration. Taiwan has what is called the National Development Fund, where they will actually fund up to 20% of a total investment of an acquisition, not only for Taiwanese companies in market, but also to do acquisitions abroad. Okay. Over the years, the government has become a lot more M&A friendlier. There were recent amendments to the Mergers and Acquisitions Act and the Company Act, which makes it a whole lot more attractive for Taiwanese companies to go and buy companies abroad. And then, of course, there's always a couple of mainland Chinese companies that are going to want to make investments, buy companies. And so Taiwan is also an area where we see a lot of competitive bidding. So what are some of the funding and incentives? Well, for one, I think this was already mentioned earlier, but Taiwan offers a very strong human capital base, incentives and capabilities for R&D and innovation. And also from an investment point of view, you have, gosh, every couple of years there's special acts. You have the 2007 Act for Development of Biotech and New Pharma that will provide special tax breaks for investments in R&D, as well as special subsidies for medical AI startups. So definitely something to look into. One of the best things to, of course, attend is one of the big trade shows in Taiwan. The biggest one is Bio Taiwan. It is scheduled for July, the end of July 2021 in Taipei. Hopefully it will happen. Hopefully we'll have a certain degree of normalcy. I don't know yet whether that is going to turn into a virtual event or not. But if you're looking to make inroads into the Taiwanese market, then definitely that is the event for you to attend. About making connections, needless to say, this is our business, this is what we do, but you can also rely on the assistance from the Taiwan External Trade Development Council, or TAITRA, here in LA, as well as the Taipei Economic and Cultural Office in Los Angeles. Both these organizations will be more than happy to help you and provide you some guidance. So you ask yourself, well, I mean, I can go investment route. Why would I go the M&A route? Well, a couple of considerations. Money first and foremost. If you get an investment, you get an investment in your company, but that doesn't necessarily translate into money for you, because you're diluting your company. Every time you go to an investment round, basically you'll have less and less equity in the company. And unfortunately, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can take money off the table. by selling the company, you can take some money off the table very early on. And if you sell to a private equity company, they will usually do a recapitalization of maybe 70, 80, 90% of the company, and maybe ask you to roll over some of the equity into a new entity. And the beauty of that is not only do you kind of get money in the first round, but when then after a couple of years and maybe after the company has grown 5x, the private equity company resells what was your company and may now be part of a larger entity, you will actually get another bite from the apple. And that can also be a significant liquidity event. Growth, well, money, you can get VC money, you can get private money. Ultimately, M&A can also be a vehicle to fund your company growth. And of course, it will put you on stronger footing, both from a market and from a competitive point of view. Succession, that is always a consideration in M&A. Right now, the average age for a company to get sold is about 17 years. Needless to say, if you're in your 60s and 70s and you want to enjoy something different in life, then M&A is definitely the route for you to go. But we also see a lot of serial entrepreneurs that have successfully built a company and are already percolating some new ideas for new companies and therefore are looking for an exit. Unfortunately, one of the things that we also see sometimes is conflict, right? You may have started a company with one of your high school or college buddies, and a couple of years into the business, you can't stand each other anymore. And so selling the company or basically recapitalizing the company and buying your partner out may be a good way to resolve that problem. So if you then specifically hone in on the difference between M&A and raising money is very difficult at times and time consuming. I mean, I've over the years tried to raise $17 million and you're on a continuous treadmill, right? Because you're trying to keep your eye on the business. At the same time, you're trying to raise money and all you're really doing, you or your CFO, is updating your financials and negotiating and haggling for what is ultimately, and in most cases, a fixed valuation, right? And that's one of the big differentiators with M&A. With M&A is you can get a couple of companies that will bid for your company, and so the investment ratios aren't necessarily pegged to a specific amount. You may have investors that may not truly understand your business. We see this all the time. You have a big real estate investor that wants to get into tech, and then 2 years later is having a little bit of buyer remorse because they are giving you bad advice and don't really understand your business. But another reason, aside from being a nice liquidity event, is that it can actually be a great career opportunity for founders of startups. We've done this a couple of times now, where a very large strategic buys a small startup company, not only because they want the IP, they want the assets, they want the people, but they are also looking for the leadership that they then will plug into their existing organizations. And frequently we will see CEOs that will assume senior vice president or even C-level executive roles in the companies that acquired them. So it could be a significant opportunity. So why would you sell now? Well, globally, the high valuation window, we'd call it, is still open. I'll show you some numbers. Unlike prior crises that we went through, like 2000 and 2008, there was still a lot of money in the market. We saw record high valuations in February prior to the whole COVID-19 crisis. And I'm lucky, I mean, and lucky we didn't really know what the market was going to turn into, but through August, September, we've actually seen record high valuations again. Flip side of that is there is still a potential of a recession. We still don't know today kind of what the government will transition into, but there's definitely going to be a significant impact into ultimately, I would say, tax events, maybe some regulatory changes. So there's a lot of things that could potentially adversely affect the M&A market, and unfortunately, it takes at least 5 to 7 years for a market to kind of go through this dip and recover. And so you really have to ask yourself, if I'm going to get the same valuation for my company 6, 7 years from now than what I'm getting now, is it really all worth continuing to plow and work and all the sweat and tears to basically end up full circle 7 years from now from where you are today? What will, of course, happen is if we do get a dip, buyers will leave the market. We'll see more fire sales. We'll see more just acqui-hires, resumption of debt. And in general, we'll see more buyer favored deals because there aren't just going to be that many companies in the market. So our advice to you is, if you've got an interesting story, if you have a healthy company that is attractive, it would be wise for you to explore going into the market now. So here's a little bit, if we look back from 2008 to where we are now. You, of course, saw the big dip with the COVID-19 crisis, but as you can see, the valuations have already dramatically improved again through the summer. So what is an optimal outcome? Well, first of all, the money. You want to get the most amount of money, but we'll submit that you also want to get the best possible structure, because somebody may be dangling a carrot of a lot of money in front of you, but if it's expressed in stock, or if there's a huge earnout and there's no possibility for you to actually gain that earnout, those are all things that we all negotiate as we talk about M&A. Your liability as well. I mean, you could personally be liable for up to 3 years. Those are all things that become part of the negotiation. Tax implications, not only here, whether it's an asset sale or stock sale or a hybrid, and then of course layered on top of that, some of the tax implications of cross-border transactions. Those are all things to be very cognizant of and get the right advice. Employment agreements, like I said, it could be lucrative for you as well as for some of your key employees. So this is also something that really needs to be negotiated upfront and as part of the whole deal structure. And then, of course, the whole integration. An M&A transaction is only deemed successful a month, maybe a couple of years after the, or at least post-transition integration. And those are also areas where we like to get started and negotiate very early on.
Serge, I don't know if we could wrap it up pretty quickly.
Yeah. So quick slide here from an M&A process, especially not only when we're talking about Taiwan, but also when we're considering any country, especially in Asia. Jenny covered on the regulatory and compliance environment, but this also applies here on the US side. In the US now, you have what is called now CFIUS, which is the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States. They equally provide oversight if you have any intellectual assets or data, I would say consumer data or patient data that would get exposed into other countries and could potentially present a national security risk. So definitely something to think about. I'm not going to talk about the whole checklist. One thing that I do want to touch on here is the top 10 deal killers, right? We always say this, only dealing with one buyer, worst thing you can do. You really need to be engaged in the discussions with multiple companies. Of course, you want to have if you go down that path, you want to have everybody on the bus. Contacting at the wrong level, you may already be in discussions with a business unit manager or a division manager. This is your opportunity to have a discussion at the C level. In terms of researching, that's definitely one thing that I wanted to highlight, and where I did have some positive and negative experiences in China. In the same way as a company will be screening you, it is important for you to properly screen a potential partner or a potential buyer, right? I've over the years worked with a company called Red Flag Group in Hong Kong. They do a little bit of investigative work where ultimately they basically will come back with a report and let you know if there's any concerns about FCPA, regulatory compliance, what the reputation is of the company, et cetera, et cetera. And with that, I will leave it at that. And of course, a lot of material. I know everybody was running a little bit over. So, but if you have any questions, let's see here. I'm trying to get to my last slide here. No, that was not it. If you have any questions, here's my email address. Feel free to contact me. We'll be more than happy to provide you some guidance.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Serge, for that. We're over the time, but we've been answering questions live, especially for my colleague Jenny. I know we got some regulatory questions at the beginning. Maybe we open it up to one question per speaker. The audience would bring up any question, just being respectful of people's time and maybe people needing to pick up their kids. Give a couple of moments here to see if any questions come up from the audience. Oh, doesn't seem like any is coming up. I don't know if you could quickly address one question, Kevin or Eduardo, about, I don't know, it's more speculation than anything, but the Pfizer vaccine that's 90% effective requires, I think, -80 or -60 transportation. How big of a logistics challenge is that going to be to get it to remote areas?
No, so it was, I believe, 80 to 60 if it was in a negative. The thing is, anything that we need to keep at a temperature, we have reefer trucks, refrigerated trucks that can maintain temperature control throughout transit. So we move it directly from a cold storage unit where it is monitored 24 hours, and then transfer it directly into the proper trucking equipment, a reefer truck, and drop it directly into their facility and their cold storage location, wherever the end user might be. So it is very possible to do so, and we do it all the time. But on the -80, I thought it was 80 at the time. So
80 would be pretty easy. That's actually kind of hot. No, I think it's actually negative.
No, I know.
That's what the challenge
No, I
is.
can't do it. But yeah,
Okay.
it's the utilization of special equipment. And
Okay.
so we have the resources and contracts to do so.
Wonderful. I didn't see any other questions come in. Paul, this is an easy one for you, but if people are interested in the international expansion program, are you the appropriate person to be in touch with to find out more information about those?
Absolutely. I represent a team of people, not only within SBA, but we have what we call the Export Outreach Team. And you've exhibited a number of those resources on the call today. But we've got great partners, not only within the federal government, state, but also outside of government as well. And Luis, you're part of that team. And we really, really are pleased to have you part of it. So we would encourage everyone to contact us or contact myself. Julie with Applied Innovation is funded by SBA, but what a great organization from absolute innovation to market, we can help companies, and we do. So thank you for asking that question.
Serge, you covered quite a bit on the logistics of M&A. Anything particular about Taiwan that I think it's noteworthy to reemphasize as companies look for collaborators, M&A, or investment opportunities in the life science industry?
Oh, no, I mean, just make sure that you get the right advice, as with anything else. I mean, I think it's the same thing from some of the other companies that we're presenting. Don't go out on your own. There's definitely some unique aspects to the market. And again, I mean, also leverage some of the resources that are available, like SBDC, SBA, and some of the Taiwan organizations that I mentioned as well. So.
Okay, wonderful. Jenny, one thing that I guess it's interesting to see is if you could elaborate on that requirement for country of origin approval, and a follow-up to that is any big impacts. I saw we had a question on that IVDR, MDR on Taiwanese approvals.
Yeah, at the moment, TFDA hasn't really issue any notice on that transition period. But then if you have a new application and you are able to supply your CFG, if you're in the US, then they generally will accept that. If you are in the European area, then you'll supply free sales certificate. They generally don't check your CE mark per se. So as long as you are able to prove that yes, your product is legally supplied in your country of origin, not necessary, CE mark, you are pretty safe.
Okay, thank you very much. Julie, if you'd like to close it up, I think we've covered quite a bit of content, and I really appreciate the opportunity to collaborate with so many industry experts.
It was fantastic. It was covered quite a range of information, so I hope everybody found what they needed. I can't imagine they didn't, but please feel free to reach out to any of our panelists or our moderator, Luis, if you need other additional assistance. Thank you again to our moderator, Luis, and our panelists. We're so grateful for your partnership. Again, everyone will receive the recording and slides tomorrow via email. And if you'd like more information on one-on-one consulting for your tech or life science business, feel free to give us a call at 800-616-7232 or go to sbdctech.org/contact and we'll pair you with a consultant. All these resources are here to help you and your business start, grow, and succeed. Thank you so much for joining us. Stay safe and healthy.
That's wonderful. Have a great one.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.